point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 300th edition of Energy Week. Tom and I have been doing this for a while.
I guess.
Since November of 2013.
Something like
and
that.
The 300 editions include all of our regular weekly shows, but they also include our specials. We had one special that was half an hour long. So at the end of this show, we will have done 299 and a half hours.
And a half hour.
Anyway.
A lot of work.
A lot of work. Tom said we were going to have a party, but you guys don't get to see it. Or maybe we'll have it next week. I don't know. Anyway, I see that there's a thing for my microphone that has fallen off. That's all right. Anyway, every day I get up and I go to work first thing in the morning.
That's early.
I start work before I have coffee. This morning I was up at 5 minutes after 3.
Why so late?
Well, you know, I think it's because
lazy,
I went to bed late last night. And, you know, what I do is that I start by doing web searches. I go to BBC and CNN and Clean Technica, which is one of the reasons why we have so many items from Clean Technica. But then I do web searches.
What's a good source?
It's a good source, yeah. Too many articles about cars, though. They're really big on electric cars. Anyway, then I go to the web and I just search the web for anything that has to do with renewable energy, climate change, nuclear reactors, whatever.
You find some weird ones once in a while.
I do find weird ones once in a while. There are things that I miss, and there are sometimes things that I find that are as much as a week old. But the day that I put them up is the day that they're on my blog. And the stories that we're talking about today are going to be stories that come from the blog. And
the best of the blog.
Best of the blog. Tom and I will try to keep you apprised of the date the stories went up on the blog so that you can go and find the synopsis of the story and click on the link and read the whole thing if that's what you'd like to do.
Well, some of them are worth reading. You know,
absolutely.
Some of them we could take up a whole show.
We could. But, and as a matter of fact, this first one that we're doing, you know, it isn't one that I thought of that way, but that's the way it is. It's a really big one. Okay, this is an item from Renews.
It is that. New Year delight for Chinese mega farm.
Yeah, by the way, this is on the 10th of January, this went up. If you go to the blog, geoharvey.com, you can find this by clicking on the 10th of January date on the calendar, which is in the more or less upper left corner of the screen. Chinese energy company State Power Investment Corporation has received approval for the first phase of a wind farm of up to 6 gigawatts in the region of Zhejiangqi. And I undoubtedly pronounced that very badly, and I apologize to anybody who speaks whatever language that's in. You know, there's about 600 languages spoken in China. In China's Inner Mongolia region, costing over 5 billion euros or $5.77 billion, the wind farm would be the largest onshore project in the world. I got news for you. It would be the largest project in the world.
It might very well be.
There aren't any 5 gigawatt.
This
offshore.
Is big.
This is
it's going
huge.
to take up 1,500 square miles of land.
1,500.
That's the number I got.
Before anybody gets too excited about that, people who don't know much about geography,
that's about 40 miles by 40 miles.
It's about 40 by 40 miles. Yeah, which is big, but it doesn't stretch for. It isn't the length of the Great Wall.
And it will supply 18 gigawatt hours of electricity in a year.
I don't believe that.
Well, that's watt hours now.
18
gigawatt hours.
Gigawatt hours. If it's 6 gigawatts, 18 gigawatt hours is running full speed for 3 hours. It should do that in a day.
Well, that's what the article said.
Well, the article's wrong.
It will also power the 2022 Winter Olympics.
Yeah.
That's
well,
what it's all about, really, I think.
Yeah, well, they are doing a lot of stuff out there, and there's always changes going on in China, so it's a little bit unpredictable. But 6 gigawatts of wind power is probably the equivalent of about 3 large nuclear reactors.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
They got to be pretty large ones, but yeah.
Yeah. Should we move on?
I think we should.
Okay, corner
We got
economic.
a picture coming up here.
Oh, yes. Speaking of nuclear reactors, we have an item from the Corner Economic. A lot of these things, I've never heard of them before. And when I come across a site that I want to have a story from, I have to check it on a different computer to find out whether people can get to it.
I use your link,
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I want to make sure that, because a lot of these things you can get to if you go through Google, but you can't get to otherwise. So,
That's interesting.
Anyway, the Corner Economic.
That picture there is from a place called Girona in Spain.
Yes.
And it's a
Nuclear
power plant.
station, which is kind of casting shade on a neighborhood. Oh, well.
Well, that's not pollution coming out of the cooling towers.
No, that's
it's
just
steam.
It's condensation. It's not even, I don't know if it's even fair to call it steam.
It's sort of like steam.
It's sort of like steam. So what do you got for a title?
Spain proposes trading in nuclear permits for others in renewable energy.
This is interesting.
This is interesting.
As an incentive to close nuclear plants, the Spanish government proposed giving their owners advantages for developing renewable energy. Connection rights for nuclear plants would convert to renewable energy permits for the same amount of power. So if you have a 1 gigawatt nuclear plant, you can convert that to 1 gigawatt of wind or solar.
And have access to the grid.
That's
what it's really all about. Well, it's interesting here. The Spanish government is getting serious about this. They've announced that they're not going to prolong the useful life of any of its nuclear plants beyond 40 years.
The nuclear plants in Spain are kind of notorious for being a little clunky.
Okay. Well, the closure of the plant is going to begin in 2023, so it's a few more years. It's going to finish in 2038. And they currently produce more than 20% of the electricity consumed in Spain.
Right. And one of the things about nuclear power is once that plant is built and paid off, it's very cheap. But
well, that's true.
The problem with it is you've got a lot of...
Until they have to refuel it.
Well, refueling it is expensive.
Yeah.
Taking care of the fuel is expensive after it's been used.
Yeah, that's true too.
And then,
Which we conveniently forget about.
Yeah, well, not on this show, but a lot of people do. Okay. You want to go on?
Yeah, let's go.
We've got an item here from CNN.
Yeah. I've mentioned before that CNN often has a nice little video at the beginning. And they're usually worth looking at.
Yeah.
Only a minute, 2 minutes, you know.
Yeah.
This one's about Fiat Chrysler.
Yes.
And they're going to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to settle emissions charges in the United States.
This sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Sounds like VW or something. Fiat Chrysler will pay hundreds of millions of dollars in fines and civil penalties to settle charges that its diesel vehicles sold in the United States violated emissions rules. A person familiar with the details told CNN the total will be roughly $800 million. Now, you know, it surprises me that Donald Trump hasn't figured out that this is a way to make money.
Well, what's going on here is the vehicles had some improper software that allowed it to violate emissions rules, which, of course, they didn't know about.
Oh, no. The people who wrote that software couldn't possibly have known what they were doing.
And the vehicles involved, in case you're interested, are the Jeep Grand Cherokee diesel SUV and the Dodge Ram 1500 trucks.
Yeah.
So not every vehicle's involved, but a couple of them, the diesels, they've been cheating.
This is not something that could happen by accident, I don't think.
I don't think. No, they cheated.
I think they cheated. This is very similar to the, and of course, Fiat Chrysler said, well, we didn't do anything wrong. We're not admitting any wrongdoing. But, It's very similar to the thing that happened with Volkswagen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Volkswagen. And
yeah, they really gimmicked that one.
Boy,
up.
did they ever! if the steering wheel wasn't turning, the car knew it was being tested,
yeah.
or it assumed that, so it wouldn't give you full power, and so it was never tested in a road-like situation. They had a specific way of avoiding the use of the emissions controls.
How neat.
Okay,
Let's
we are
move
up
along
to
here.
Friday, January 11th. And by the way, those emissions kill people. So they were cheating on something that resulted in people dying.
Absolutely. By the way, we got a picture coming up here.
Oh, we do? Okay. There we go.
There we go.
This is Friday, January 11th, and this is an item from Clean Technica.
That's a little park in Oslo.
In Oslo.
Okay. And
Isn't that pretty?
Huh?
Isn't that pretty?
It is pretty, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been to Norway.
Yeah?
I was in Bergen, not Oslo.
Yes.
And back then, which was ancient history when I was in the Navy,
Yeah.
they had a strolling street. No traffic
Yes.
was allowed on that street. You know, that was
Yes.
so many years ago. And now they're talking about, in Oslo, booting cars from the city center.
Yeah.
That'd be like in Brattleboro, you can't put your cars on Main Street.
Yeah. Oslo is one of the top cities in the world for electric vehicles. That already makes it a clear leader in clean transport and more enjoyable, healthier air for citizens. But the city is taking things a step further. Oslo is moving to restrict car use altogether within certain areas of the city.
Well, there's some nice pictures in this article.
There are, and that picture that is up there on the screen is just one of them. There is, you know, I looked at that and I thought, that is so pretty. I just got to put that up. There's one thing about this that bothers me, though, and that is the stairs.
Yeah.
The treads on those stairs are angled.
They appear to be, don't
I
they?
wouldn't want to go on those stairs in icy situations.
Yeah, they look like they are, and I'm sure they have icy situations in Oslo.
Yeah. Well, you notice that there's a little path in the grass next to it. There
is that, yes.
There are people who didn't want to use those things.
I didn't notice that, but now that you pointed out.
Yeah.
Well, there's a fundamental point from this article.
Yeah.
To make a place highly walkable and enjoyable for humans, you got to put some serious limits on cars.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, let's move on.
We've got an item here from Common Dreams.
Yeah, it is from Common Dreams. How about that? As the world teeters on the brink of climate catastrophe. 600 plus groups demand Congress back a visionary Green New Deal. Now, we're going to be hearing a lot about that.
We're going to hear a lot about the Green New Deal.
Well, it's got a good ring to it, and people are going to be talking about it.
The name puts conservatives off. But we'll get into that also later.
We'll get into that, because we're going to be talking about this on several of these articles.
Yes. On behalf of their millions of members and supporters, 626 environmental organizations demanded that U.S. policymakers pursue visionary and affirmative legislative action such as the Green New Deal, and that pursue visionary and affirmative legislative action is in quotes. I believe that came from a letter that they sent, is that right? A petition?
It was a petition, a letter, and it was kind of both. But
kind of both.
Somebody told them about it.
Yeah, right. Well, we'll see more about this.
Listen, a couple of quick takeaways here.
Okay.
This is quotes from the article. We need action on climate change that ends our dependence on dirty energy, puts power in the hands of communities, and provides good jobs.
You know, when I read this, I was struck by something that I think people should understand. Why are people opposing, those who do, switching from fossil fuels to green energy?
I don't think it's people. I think it's the fossil fuel interests.
Well, yes,
that are
but
out there.
What it looks like to me is they're
terrified
of the idea of democracy. They don't want the power in the hands of the people.
Well, it's always been that way.
Yeah, and I'm talking about patriotic American organizations here. They don't want democracy. They want they want oligarchy.
Which is what we got and always have had, really.
But we've got a Congress which in 2016 was bought into place by people who paid, I think, probably over $1 billion, well over $1 billion, to get that Congress into office.
Absolutely.
I mean,
if you add it all together, $1 billion is conservative.
$1 billion is conservative. What was the organization? Freedom Partners in January of 2015 announced that it was going to put, my recollection is $889 million into buying itself the people in Congress that were on its side. This is not democracy.
I don't know who wrote this, but I remembered one of the best investments a businessman can make is to buy a congressman.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
there's another takeaway here.
Yes.
And it's a duh, but it's still worth thinking. Americans want a livable future for their children.
Yeah.
And that requires keeping fossil fuels in the ground.
Yes.
While greening the economy on a wartime footing.
Yes. Well, we're getting to the point
where we got to do something. We got to stop talking about it.
Our hands, I think, have been forced here. We are going to have to take very strong proactive actions, because people who have been advocating in favor of a free market, their words, have been in fact pushing for a market that's controlled by people who peddle fossil fuels.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, there's 7 demands in this, and you want to look. We're not going to read them, but they're worth looking at. They make sense. And if this is one of the articles you should look up, I think.
Maybe we should read them, Tom. Do you have time? Are they short?
We'll just take it out at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got them. I got 7 of them. Half of all fossil fuel leasing, halt all fossil fuel leasing, phase out all fossil fuel extraction, and end fossil fuel and other dirty energy subsidies. Well, that's the biggie.
Okay.
Transition power generation to 100% renewable energy.
Okay.
Expand public transportation and phase out fossil fuel vehicles.
Yes.
Harness the full power of the Clean Air Act.
Yes.
Ensure a just transition led by impacted communities and workers. Uphold indigenous rights. And finally, fossil fuel companies should pay their fair share for damages caused by climate change rather than shifting those costs to taxpayers.
Right.
So they all make sense.
We will get back to this.
I think we will.
Yeah, okay. We're up to an item from Solar Power World.
You got it. DSM holds grand opening for largest net metered solar installation in New Jersey. And by the way, DSM is short for Dutch State Mines, which is just the name of a company. They don't even mine anymore, but they're a conglomerate.
This is like Dong, Danish Oil and Natural Gas.
Well, I see these things. I want to find out what they mean.
Yeah, which became
where they come
Ørsted.
Huh?
Dong became Ørsted because they had nothing to do with oil and natural gas.
Not anymore.
Okay, DSM North America opened its newly expanded solar field in Belvedere, New Jersey. The 20.2 megawatt solar project located on 66 acres is now the largest net metered solar installation in New Jersey and the second largest on the East Coast. This is getting big for net metering.
Well, it's 20 megawatts.
Mm-hmm.
The solar panel project in Brattleboro is 5 megawatts.
So this is 4 times as big.
It is that.
But it also gives you an idea of how big the solar project in Brattleboro is. It's a big project.
It's a fairly large project, yeah. As projects go, it's a big one.
Yeah.
There's 62,000 solar panels, and they're going to produce 25 gigawatt hours of electricity annually.
Yeah. Okay, we're up to Saturday, January 12th.
And we got another picture
We
here.
have a picture, and we have an item from the Natural Resources Defense Council.
Well, if you can't figure out what's going on there, let's tell you, it's a coal plant being demolished.
Yes, that's what it is.
And the article says that wind and solar are the final nails in coal's coffin. Well,
Yeah.
that's true enough.
During the 2016 campaign and in various rallies since, President Trump promised to save America's coal industry and put the nation's coal miners, quote, back to work, end quote. Trump continues to labor under the delusion that he can accomplish that, but fortunately, that's just a delusion.
Well, the numbers tell a different story. Okay? More U.S. coal plants have been deactivated in the first 2 years of Trump's presidency than were taken offline during President Obama's presidency.
First 4 years of Obama.
First 4 years, yep.
Yeah. So what Trump has done here, he has inherited Obama's war on coal, as he used to call it.
In a way,
he has kept it going.
Yeah.
Well, because he doesn't have control over the free market, and the free market is turning against coal. It's that simple.
Well, we'll talk about it again, but coal is not sexy anymore.
Not sexy. Okay, our next item is from the Bennington Banner, and I'm very happy about this because the Bennington Banner is a sister publication to the Brattleboro Reformer.
Yep.
And
so this article first appeared in the Reformer.
It first appeared in the, did it in the Reformer? Yeah. I came across it in the Bennington Banner. And I had been not using items from the Bennington Banner and the Brattleboro Reformer because in the past, anything that was there
over a month,
a week actually, if it was there for longer than a week,
they wanted money for it.
They wanted you to be a subscriber to get to it, and I didn't want to do that. But I talked to their staff, and they said, you know, it's now the new policy. You can get 3 articles in a month. So with that, people can go to it. And if they're going to get more than 3 articles in a month, they can subscribe.
Well, this is very current, okay?
Yes.
Vermont Yankee sale to North Star completed.
Entergy Nuclear completed the sale of the closed Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant to North Star Group Services, an industrial demolition company. The idea of that demolition company and now owns
well, they're going to demolish it. I mean,
that
makes sense.
After a 2-year review, demolition of the nuclear plant will be undertaken decades ahead of Entergy's original time frame.
Well, Entergy really didn't want anything to do with it.
Oh, they didn't want anything to do with it. No, they wanted to get rid of it.
Well, this is interesting because Yankee sold for a symbolic $1,000.
Yeah, Vermont
Plus,
Yankee was sold
they had
for
to assume the
$1,000.
$506 million decommissioning fund.
Yeah, which means that they have responsibility for decommissioning it using that fund.
Yes. And it's the original price tag for the sale before it happened was $1.2 billion. You know, including everything, including all of this.
Yeah.
The sale was completed without an additional contribution to the plant's trust funds, which was established by the plant's original ratepayers.
Yeah.
Entergy, since it bought Vernon in 2002, never contributed to the decommissioning trust fund.
Yes. Okay. Now we've got a
another
picture
here. Yep. Let's get
and
that
we've got
This is not a pretty picture.
No, it's not. From a publication called The Hill, which is basically a Washington, D.C. political publication.
Well, that's the so-called campfire
in
Paradise, California.
Yeah.
And that was a house at one time. And a car.
Yep, and now all it is
a shell. It's a fireplace.
Fireplace and a chimney and a hunk of metal.
Trump threatens those hurt by his failure on climate change.
As the federal government shutdown and the rancorous border wall dispute consumes much of our attention, President Trump reiterated his threat to withhold essential wildfire response funds from California. He may try to divert the funds to pay for the wall. Well, he's
going to try.
He's saying that
he's doing everything he can. He loves that wall.
Yeah, he does, and he says he can do the wall with emergency funds. That he can just say this is a crisis, and I'm going to get these funds from wherever I can get it. And you notice that he hasn't done that, and he can't talk.
He can't do it, can he?
Well, you see, here's the problem.
Yeah.
He is treading on really thin ice here.
Yeah.
Really thin ice. From a constitutional point of view, my understanding is that he does not have authority to do what he's doing. He's the first president who has ever told the Congress, you've got to give me this money or the federal government is closed.
Yeah.
He had a deal. He had a deal with Congress.
That's blackmail.
Yeah, it's basically that or extortion. But, I think that we are in a, and I read an article by Alan Betts, who writes on green things and is known, and he said this is an impeachable offense, and I think, having read that article, I think it's probably true.
Is. Yes.
And what he's doing is he's saying, I'm not going to let these 800,000 people have their pay until you give me the $5.7 billion I want to build that wall. And you know, he couldn't get the wall built when the Republicans controlled Congress, and now what he's doing is, I don't know.
The next thing coming is a wall in Vermont.
Yes.
To keep Vermonters in, not out. They want to go up to Canada because medical care is cheaper.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, quick takeaway.
Yeah.
Fire disasters impose costs much beyond dollars and cents.
Yes, they do.
At least 86 people died in the Camp Fire.
Yes.
And more than 14,000 houses were destroyed. Now, you were just looking at one of them.
Just looking at one.
There was 100 major blazes in 2018. And this doesn't count the health impacts. And we've talked about that on the show.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we are up to Sunday, January 13th, and we've got an item from the Houston Chronicle.
The Green New Deal shows its head again.
Yes, it does indeed.
Green New Deal isn't radical. It's natural for Texas wind, solar, and energy. By the way, the Green New Deal is not a plan yet. It's a plan to make a plan.
Yes, it is. And it's interesting to me that this is an editorial piece from the Houston Chronicle. This is from Republican territory. We're getting this.
Yeah, but they got flooded real bad.
I guess they did. A Green New Deal would expedite more solar and wind power usage, but first, people need to know what a Green New Deal means. No state will be impacted more than Texas, with its rich oil and gas resources, and no city more than Houston.
That's interesting quote.
They are in favor of it.
Definitely. Okay.
Why? Well, Texas is going to transition, and it's going to transition from the fuel that it's running out of,
which is oil
and natural gas, into the fuel or the energy source that it's got unbelievable amounts of, which are wind power and solar. So, you know, they're like a lot of people in the United States. All it means is changing the job. That's all. Okay, should we move on, or is there more about that?
Well, there's a quick notation about Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes.
Who's behind this Green New Deal, or at least she's really
pushing it.
She wants to create a committee. So,
yes.
Like I said, it's not a deal.
Yes.
It's about creating the deal.
I think it's so funny. What did she do? She got her people organized to take over an office in the Capitol building.
Yeah.
And whose office?
I don't know.
Nancy Pelosi's.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
She's saying the Democrats have got to be paying attention to this.
Well, she wants, and this is what she's looking for, she's calling for the country to be fully powered by renewable energy sources within 10 years.
Yes.
It's doable, but
doable.
It's not going to be easy.
It's doable.
She doesn't want committee members who have taken campaign donations from the oil and gas industry.
That's tough.
Yeah. She's fearful of legislation being watered down as the Affordable Care Act
I don't blame her.
was weakened by the medical industry.
Yeah, I don't blame her.
So we got another picture coming up.
We do indeed.
Here.
This is an interesting picture to me.
Nice picture, actually.
This is really close to the water. I mean, that picture was taken really close to the water.
I would think.
I mean, if you were on the deck of a ship, the water wouldn't look like that unless the ship was sinking.
Well, it says that the oceans are warming 40% faster than predicted.
This is very, very scary. Newsflash, the oceans are warming 40% faster than predicted just a few years ago. That finding is contained in a new study published January 11th in the journal Science. As the oceans warm, they will absorb heat less efficiently, and that means that with time, the land will get hotter faster. But you know what it means in the short run is that our weather is going to get worse faster.
Well, you connect the dots, that's what you get.
That's what you get, and it is frightening.
This is from the article. We now return you to our usual programming already in progress. Go back to sleep. Nothing to see here. Move along.
I'll tell you.
And the news from it is 2018 is going to be the warmest year on record for the Earth.
Yeah, and this article.
And last year was the warmest year. The year before that was the warmest year.
It just warms up. This article was written by Steve Hanley, who is an author who publishes at Clean Technica. And I was actually kind of thrilled to read an article that he wrote and find that he was quoting me.
Quoting what?
Quoting me.
Was he good?
Yeah.
Want to stand up, take a bow?
No thanks. My microphone will get snagged and pulled off, and then I'll have to crawl on the floor to figure out where it is, and everybody will think to themselves, "What an idiot he is."
Well, let's move along.
Okay, we're at the Press Herald.
Democrats looking to finally tackle climate impacts to the Gulf of Maine.
After years of inaction under the old administration, Maine may finally deal with the impacts of climate change along the coast, including ocean acidification, a byproduct of the use of fossil fuels that represents potentially catastrophic threat to Maine's marine harvesters.
Well, the threat is that acidification weakens clams and other shell-building animals.
Such as lobsters.
Such as lobster, definitely.
Yeah,
lobsters.
absolutely.
They're mentioned in the article.
They've got big economic reasons to regret the fact that the oil is
it seemed there was some sort of a roadblock in a former legislation, and the governor.
Well,
they passed legislation. The governor vetoed it a couple of times.
The former governor had no sympathy for the idea of climate change, ocean acidification, or renewable energy.
Yeah, but you think he might have had some sympathy for the lobster fishermen?
You would think so. But you see, if you're going to be sympathetic with a lobster fisherman, you've got to stop being sympathetic with a fossil fuels industry.
Bingo.
Okay, we're up to Monday, January 14th, and we've got a
picture
here of a place called Ardrossan, Scotland.
It is that.
Ardrossan, I guess it is.
Ardrossan,
I don't
something like that.
understand
Come
how
on
to
here.
pronounce.
Scottish Power, the name of a company.
Yeah.
The Journey to Renewables.
Scottish Power, one of the UK's biggest utilities, announced it will switch to 100% renewable energy. Wow. I mean, this is one of the big six.
Well, they're kind of hedging their bets there, but we'll get into that.
The move is hailed as a touchstone movement and a good example for any big utility seeking to shed its fossil fuel legacy. But does the move make economic sense? And if so, will more utilities follow?
Well, what's going on here? First of all, Scottish Power is Iberdrola. You've heard us talk about Iberdrola
absolutely.
Here. And they're very big in wind.
Yes, they are.
Worldwide.
Worldwide.
And Scottish Power has sold off 2.5 gigawatts worth of coal and gas plants.
Yes.
But they didn't shut them down. They just sold them to somebody else.
They sold them to
somebody else. They're still buying the power.
Yeah.
But they've built enough wind power to power 1.2 million homes.
Which is half the homes in Scotland.
I would say. I would guess, yeah. So this is a quote. From today on, we can focus solely on making energy generation cheaper, cutting carbon quicker, building smart grids, and connecting customers to renewable energy future for transportation and heating.
Now, I'm going to translate that out of Scottish and into English.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah. What they're saying is from now on, we're going to be using renewable energy to compete with the people who were foolish enough to buy our coal-burning power plants.
That's a good way of putting it.
Oh, well. Okay.
This is a good takeaway. They're currently completing the construction of the world's largest offshore wind farm.
Yes.
Which is off the coast of Suffolk in England.
Yeah, but it's not going to be the world's largest for very long.
Probably not. It's set to go live in 2020. And it's a capacity of 700 megawatts, which is not that big.
We were just talking about 6 gigawatts in Inner Mongolia. So, this is why I said largest onshore wind farm. It's the largest wind farm. Okay.
Well, we'll move along.
We've got an item here from Clean Technica.
Solar plus storage is half the cost of gas peaker plants.
Don't you love this?
That's interesting. that is very interesting.
Prices for electricity from solar plus storage plants have had a precipitous fall. As prices continue to drop, Wood Mackenzie has forecast that as the market for solar plus storage matures, it could put over put over 6,400 megawatts of new natural gas-fired peaking capacity in the United States at risk by 2027.
Well, ultimately, the imperative of lower prices will carry the day.
Absolutely.
Economics rules.
Yeah, absolutely.
Energy storage is now becoming more integrated into resource plans because it just makes sense.
Yeah, I'm seeing more and more and more storage going into already existing photovoltaic arrays and already existing wind farms and plans for new
Well, storage is a
stuff.
good idea. I mean, there are times when you generate more electricity than you need.
Yep,
You can throw it away or you can store it.
that's right. Okay, our next item is also from Clean Technica.
All the good news about renewable energy from the U.S. Department of Energy.
Trump pledged, the woman who wrote this, Tina Casey, has a real sense of humor. I don't use her articles for this show very often because it's really hard sometimes to get a good synopsis built from what she's saying. But, you know, it's worth reading. Trump pledged to revive the U.S. coal industry, but during his tenure, its growth prospects flatlined. The latest outlook on electricity generation from the DOE has bad news for coal, good news about renewable energy, and some so-so news for natural gas.
Well, the fighting thread in all of this is that energy infrastructure is just like any other infrastructure.
Yeah.
It gets old.
It gets old.
Okay. At a certain point, repairs and upgrades are simply not sufficient to keep up with other changes.
Yes, and there is.
Okay. That's what's happening here.
Yeah, and we are going to touch on that in an article that we're going to talk about in just a minute.
Things. Well, the U.S. has other waterborne energy resources waiting in the wings. Wave power is one of them.
Yes.
Ocean energy harvesting devices. We've talked about one of them on this show.
Right.
And floating solar panel arrays. We've mentioned that.
Yes.
On reservoirs and stuff.
Yes.
And other engineered interior water bodies. Whatever that means. Oh, that's a reservoir.
Those are the reservoirs. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, January 15th.
And
we have a picture.
Another picture
Here's
here.
another wave, but this is
Whoa.
a little bit different from our previous waves.
That's a nice wave.
And we have an item here from IFL Science.
As world's oceans warm, their waves are becoming more powerful. That isn't all bad news, but it isn't all good news.
It's not what I would call good news. Scientists at the University of California, Santa Cruz have revealed that as the surface of the world's oceans continue to warm, there is a direct association with increased wave energy globally. Their study was published in the journal Nature Communications, and what you had said was it's not all bad news. We can get more energy.
We can get more energy out of it, yeah. But we got to put the stuff out there.
Yeah, and we have to deal with the damage those waves will do.
And that could be a very considerable thing. I mean,
Yeah, it could be.
we've talked about, again, people moving away from the coast.
Yes, and of course our next item also has something to do with that. It's from CNN.
Well, let's talk about that one.
Yeah.
Antarctic ice melt has accelerated by 280% in the last 4 decades.
A pair of studies, one published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences and the other in the scientific journal Nature Geoscience, which we've talked about before, share the same ominous message. Our planet's ice is melting at an alarming rate, and this is bad news for global sea levels.
Well, ice that's melting, that's floating in the ocean, and it melts, doesn't contribute to ocean rise, just like a ice cube in your drink.
Yeah.
As it melts, doesn't raise the energy. But the ice that's melting on the land does.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that's the big story
That's what they're
here.
talking about. And
Ice loss has increased 6-fold from 40 gigatons per year in 1979 to 250 gigatons.
Yeah,
Now that is scary.
that is.
And that melt rate has been accelerating.
It's been accelerating. Yes, that's right. Okay. Should we move to the next one? That was from CNN. We've got another one from
picture coming
CNN.
up here.
And this picture is not a nuclear bomb going off, fortunately.
Well, it's a gas platform. If you look real hard, you'll see it there.
Yeah, it's.
And it's also what looks like a helicopter floating
It
around
looks
in
like
there.
a helicopter. This was taken from a very, very, very far away. and then magnified.
Yep,
and
that's why the sun is so big.
that's why the sun looks so big. And the gas platform, I don't know. I would bet that that gas platform was a couple of miles from the photographer. So
It probably was, because the sun is huge in this
yeah, it
picture
is.
here.
So what have you got here?
What
for title?
warmer oceans mean for the planet.
Our oceans are much warmer and are heating up faster than we previously thought, driven by climate change caused by humans. According to a study published in the journal Science, its authors said 2018 would be the warmest year on record for the oceans. Now, the oceans temperatures don't go up and down like the air temperatures do. They're much steadier,
more stable.
much more stable, but they have been. The temperature has been increasing and increasing. And the thing that I find frightening about this is that as the ocean temperatures increase, storms get worse.
That's very true. There's a nice 3-minute video as part of this
Yes.
on CNN. So look it up, and it's worth seeing.
Yep.
The world's oceans are absorbing 60% more heat than we thought.
Yes.
When water heats up, it takes up more space. That means as oceans warm, sea levels rise.
So even without the ice melting,
The sea level
the
is
sea level
still
would
rising.
be rising.
This effect alone can make sea levels rise a foot by the end of the century. Huh.
Yeah. That you're talking about just the warming of the oceans.
Just the warming of the oceans.
So anything that happens with the stuff that we were just talking about, the 280% increase in the melt of the polar ice, that is in addition to that foot.
Well, they touch base on that here. It's a foot just by the warming alone.
Yes.
If it's melting ice and expanding water, the sea levels could rise up to 1 meter.
Which is 40 inches.
Yeah.
Now,
So it's a fat yard.
a meter, to a person who was born and raised in Illinois, or born in Kansas and raised in Illinois and New
Call it
Hampshire.
a fat yard.
As I was, Illinois and New Hampshire. What is a meter of sea level rise? I mean, how can that do any damage? Well, the answer to that is it will wipe out Miami.
Definitely.
And it will wipe out a whole bunch of other coastal communities.
What's
It would
Trump's place down there?
Mar-a-Lago.
That's gone.
Mar-a-Lago is actually about 15 feet above sea level.
That's gone.
But the problem is, if the sea level rises 40 inches, they're going to have to build new bridges to Mar-a-Lago and other buildings on that
You're
spit
going to
of
have to
land.
put a
that it's
dike
on.
all around it to keep it
But
there.
you see, you can't do it with a dike because it's
It
on
comes
sand.
up from underneath, right?
It's on sandstone.
Whoa.
The water just goes right through it. So what we're seeing here is, for example, in Miami, wealthy people who have apartments right near the water have been moving to areas of the city that are a little bit higher because already it makes a difference to them. So they've been moving into a neighborhood called Little Haiti, where
there's a bunch of poor people.
a bunch of poor people and the rents were low,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden this is a place
They're
where
kicking them all out.
wealthy people are living, and the poor people in Little Haiti are having to move to Atlanta, in places like that, to find places to live and
they can
jobs.
afford.
Exactly. So this is an effect that is already taking place, and if the
It
government
is.
of the United States is not going to recognize this or do anything about it, then what we're talking about is a psychological condition called denial.
Well, we've talked about Miami twice a month when the extra high tides come.
Yeah,
The sewers work backwards.
Yeah.
The streets fill up with seawater.
yeah,
Already.
already. And this is a problem that's spreading to other places.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, we've talked about New Orleans, too. We've talked about western Louisiana.
yes.
There's one town we talked about has moved 3 times.
Yes, and in New Orleans, the Republican administration of Louisiana has county-sized areas such as what is the name of the parish that's in the southwestern corner of Louisiana?
We've talked about it, but I can't remember
Yeah.
it. But yeah.
These are areas that are going to have to be evacuated, and the areas near New Orleans that are outside the dikes are going to have to be evacuated, and not all that far in the future. like within 25 years. So,
Well, if you look at New Orleans, it's all surrounded by water.
yeah, and land prices are suffering already.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Well, this is the last day of the week.
We are up to the last day of the week, and we've got over 15 minutes left to talk. We can just chat and chat and chat.
I didn't flip the the
You
clock,
didn't, but that's
so
okay.
I don't know how much time is
Well,
left.
I can see what
Yeah,
time it is, and I know what
43,
time we started.
yeah. Well,
Okay, this is from CNN.
And this is this is something to remember. One simple but really hard solution to stop climate change.
Actually, I think it's an easy solution if people just recognize the importance.
Well, that's the hard part.
Yeah, getting Donald Trump to say, well, I think maybe we should do something here, and it might be a little bit more important than a border wall. Okay, we're at Wednesday, January 16th, and as I said, this is from CNN.
Read that first sentence twice.
The time to act on climate change and limit its human causes is now, as many studies have shown. The time to act on climate change and limit its human causes is now.
Bingo.
Bingo. A report in the journal Nature Communications maps out what it may take to get there. It is to phase out its, quote, carbon-intensive infrastructure, end quote, at the end of its design lifetime. This is a really simple solution, but it would take a political act to do it.
Someone needs to have the courage to go ahead and do
Well,
it.
if we could get both sides to the table to talk about this, it wouldn't be that hard to do. What it means is that we have to say, look, if you own a coal-burning plant, you're allowed to use that plant until it is old enough to shut down.
Bingo. Yeah, absolutely. It's design lifetime.
Right. This
40
is
years, 50 years.
This is like
Bingo.
the nuclear stations in Spain.
Yeah. Yep.
When the thing is 40 years old, it's time to shut it off. Mm-hmm. And if we just say, okay, we're not going to build any coal-burning plants or natural gas plants to replace these things, we're just going to shut down the ones that are there when they hit their lifetime, which means that in terms of the plant itself, it's not a stranded asset.
Absolutely.
You see? So
Well, the word in that sentence is now.
now.
Now. That's the word.
Now, and if we put it off, it's going to start getting very expensive.
Well, if the world is to phase out its carbon-intensive infrastructure, which is what they came from the article, at the end of its design lifetime, starting now, there's a 60% chance that the planet's peak temperature can remain below the goal of 1.5 degrees,
1.5.
which we've talked about.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm beginning to think that we aren't going to be able to hit that 1.5.
Well, the
It's
next
gonna be more
sentence
than
says
that.
that the planet is already 2/3 of the way toward that limit.
That's right.
Okay,
so we have
we're
to
up
act.
at 1 degree.
We have to act. And having a bunch of people buy a Congress, buy a White House that will refuse to act on climate change is not going to get us there.
If we don't act, the continuing current emissions would end up creating a temperature rise of 3.2 degrees centigrade.
Which is going to be nasty.
Well, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good.
No, it's not.
Change would have to happen across all sectors, not just the energy sector.
Well, again, we've talked about this many times. The fact that climate change is happening is obvious to anybody who wants to look. In order not to see it, you have to refuse to look.
You have to refuse. Well, what they're saying here, and they spell it out, power plants would need to be replaced. Duh. But so would gas and diesel fuel cars.
Yes.
Aircraft, ships,
Yes.
and industrial plants.
Yes.
Even cows would have to go.
Well,
At least the way we're using them now.
yes. I mean, the way we're using them now is borders on
Industrial
the
farming.
Industrial farming, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, we want dairy products. I don't know how
sure.
many people are advocating that we don't use any dairy products. I know there are some. Vegans don't use dairy products.
Yeah.
But if we're going to use dairy products, then we're going to have some beef. And I don't object to that. I think that that's basically participating in life. But We've got to act, and there are things that we have to change.
Well, if we start now, there's a 60% chance. If we wait till 2030, it goes down to 50%.
I don't think we can wait till 2030.
Well, that's the message here. The goal would need to be a zero carbon world not long after the middle of the century.
Yeah.
It's doable.
It's doable. There's no question about it.
Do we
now,
have
zero
the will?
carbon, by the way, we're talking about net zero. Which means that if you have things that you absolutely need to use petroleum products or coal products, for that matter, you can use some, but you have to do something.
Offset it by something else. Yep.
Okay. Should we go on?
Yeah, we got another picture here.
We do indeed, and this is more about the Green New Deal. And there is a picture of New York City.
Well, this is slightly different Green New Deal. This is Cuomo's Green New Deal, but he's still basically talking about the same thing. New York governor launches a Green New Deal with accelerated clean energy targets.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced the launch of a Green New Deal initiative. Cuomo's 2019 Justice Agenda calls for a ramp-up of renewable energy deployments in New York that seeks to have a 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040. And he wants to be 100% carbon neutral in all realms.
That's exactly right. Ultimately, to eliminate its entire carbon footprint is what the article said. He calls for doubling distributed solar by 2025 and nearly quadrupling offshore wind by 2035.
Right.
Doable? Yeah.
Yeah.
But we got to make up our mind to do it.
We have to. And I think that Andrew Cuomo is a person who's got the idea that he can bring this about for New York State. Now,
he certainly can do it for New York State.
Yeah, and as New York State does that, I mean, California and Hawaii have already got 100% renewable goals.
They're up there.
Colorado is another one which is looking for a 100% renewable goal. If you think about this, you start to realize why the fossil fuels industry is fighting so hard. Because their customers are fighting to get away from them. Yeah. And they're seeing this as a huge loss. Now, if we can allow the coal burning and natural gas burning plants to stay online until they have run out of time, which that article we just talked about said, but we don't allow any more to be built, and that's important.
Absolutely.
What is going to happen is the stranded assets don't include things that people have put huge amounts of money into, except for mines and oil wells and gas wells. So that limits the damage to people who are using fossil fuels.
Well, like I just said, we have to have the will. The government has to have the will.
Right.
The people have to have the will.
Well, they're going to develop the will. The question is
it be too late?
Is it going to be? Yeah, that's one of the questions.
Problem.
The other question is it going to be something that they develop the will to do because they have thought about it in advance, or is it going to be developed because they are forced to do it, which is going to be very uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens in that.
Well, we get the last article now coming up.
We do.
U.S. coal retirements in 2018 could be as high as 15.4 gigawatts.
A total of 16.9 gigawatts of U.S. power capacity was retired in 2018, including 11.8 gigawatts worth of coal-fired power capacity, figures from S&P Global Market Intelligence say. But data from other analyst figures suggest U.S. coal retirements in 2018 could have been as high as 15.4 gigawatts. I think that this S&P Global Market Intelligence is way off.
I think you're right.
Because
well, we do know that coal-fired power plants are struggling financially. We know that.
Yeah.
They're expensive, they're dirty, they're inflexible.
Yeah.
Okay? The total of 11.8 gigawatts more than double the amount retired in 2017.
Right.
Okay, they're closing them pretty fast.
They're closing them very fast.
And right now, in the United States, coal accounts for nearly 70% of all 2018 power retirements.
And
so they know what's going on.
They're talking about 15.4 gigawatts here. I think it might actually be more than that.
It could very well be.
But we've got a total of 17 megawatts of coal burning facilities scheduled to come online. That's the same amount there was last year. This is designs that are not being worked on or not being finished.
These are plants that they committed to build quite a while ago, and they're just finishing up.
Or they're
and as soon as they turn them on, they're going to start losing money.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't make sense to do that, which is why there's nothing Donald Trump can do to save the coal workers' jobs except to talk people in other parts of the world into buying coal. And he's not alone in wanting to do that.
Well, the Australians are doing it big time.
Yeah. The Indians don't want to buy the coal. They want to produce the coal in India. The Chinese don't want to buy coal. They want to produce the coal in China. So, you know, we've got fierce competition for overseas markets, and our national market is going dry. Let's be truthful. And coal miners are not going to be getting new jobs in the coal mines. Not in any numbers.
Not in this country.
No.
For sure.
Although they can get jobs like, oh, what was that girl's name? Jessica Kilroy. You remember her in the wind turbines?
Yeah, right, I do.
Anybody
hanging in the middle of midair there.
Anybody who's interested in finding it, her name is Jessica Kilroy. The Kilroy is Kilroy, just like Kilroy was here. And if you go to YouTube and look her up, you will find her performing music. But you will also find her dangling in the air 200 feet up, repairing the blade of a wind turbine.
Well, I did read, and I did make a note of the article, the Coal Miners Union is starting to retrain coal miners into renewable energy jobs.
Yes.
Which makes a lot of sense.
One of the people who corresponds with me fairly regularly, because of the energy blog that we talk about, is a woman who lives in New Mexico, and she's a union organizer for the coal unions there.
Okay.
And she has been telling the coal unions, as a union organizer, that they have to start training for new jobs. And that has put her into a position.
At least she's a realist.
Yeah, that's put her into a position where she has not been very popular in some quarters.
I guess, yeah.
And but she's been a union activist her entire adult life. And she knows what she's doing. She wants to have those people out there have jobs that they can depend on, that they can feed families with, that they can pay their rent with. And the coal mines are just not staying open in that part of the country, or in any part of the country.
Well, we won't probably live to see it, but someday, not too distant future, you're going to find coal in museums. People are going to say, you know, they used to burn those rocks.
Yes, right. Well, if you want to find out what a coal mine is, almost what a coal mine is like, there's a very good display, or at least there was a very good display when I was a child 65 years ago. And the last time I looked, it was still there, but I haven't actually seen it. I just looked online. At the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago.
Is that so? So you can sort of go down an imitation coal mine.
That's right. They had an elevator that you could get into, and you could go down a shaft and come out in a room, and there was coal mining equipment in there, and a guy would be operating it, and you know.
Real guy?
An actual human being, yes. That's right. Okay, we are at the end of our rope. Time to say goodbye.
Adios, people.